is Jakub Gałuszka, and I work for violence prevention through urban upgrading, an organization which deals with upgrading of settlements with an aim to reduce violence in mainly outskirts of Cape Town. So Kailisha, where we initiated our work in 2006, and some of the informal settlements like the Heights, Lotus Park and Monabisi Park. Additionally, we also work in Nyanga and Guguletu, which is another formal area. Our work started in 2006 in Kailisha, and although many of the infrastructural interventions has been already accomplished, we continue to work with the communities which are out there. Our team composes of people with different backgrounds, so we have sociologists, urban planners, architects, people with a community participation background, and the composition of the team reflects also our work streams. So community participation, social crime prevention, situational crime prevention, institutional crime prevention, and overall the structure of the organization reflects our approach towards upgrading, which is integrated upgrading, dealing with different aspects of development and crime prevention.
Good afternoon, I'm Joe Ruben, and I work at Stellenbosch Municipality. Stellenbosch Municipality is the second oldest municipality in South Africa, and we are also the second municipality that created an informal settlements department. I am currently acting as the manager of this department. The departure that we took was that originally informal settlements were seen as just a feeder for formal housing. However, what has come to the fore over the past couple of years is that informal settlements is going to stay here with us for quite a number of years, and that we need to look differently at how we deal and manage informal settlements.
My name is Liza Chialia. I'm with the African Centre for Cities here at the University of Cape Town. We are a research centre dedicated to exploring the challenges and opportunities of cities both in Africa and globally.
We've been, as I mentioned already, we've been working in Kailisha, which is a formal settlement, and one of the biggest achievements which can be noticed while you actually visit Kailisha is, for instance, Harare Square, which has been entirely developed through the last 7 years. It looked different before, and actually the project, now I mentioned about the visual aspects and the infrastructure, but the project was more comprehensive than that. So it included also social crime prevention and setting up many ECDs, so early childhood development structures, cooperating with a community, for instance, through setting up safe node area committee structure, which still are taking active part in the development of the areas. So this is just one example of how our projects look like, specific to the formal areas, but we also work in informal areas, as I have mentioned before, so the Heights, Monabisi Park and the Lotus Park, and we of course need to slightly shift the approach because this is different set of circumstances, but overall we also work within different aspects of upgrading, so social crime prevention, institutional and so on, while with informal areas also there's an aspect of tenure and enumeration, and which comes at the beginning of the process. Another element that needs to be mentioned both in the context of formal and informal areas are research activities and knowledge management that we are dealing with. So enumeration process and the setting up of the community structures and cooperation with local communities is first supported, or actually first it's preceded by a set of activities which help us to define who actually is the most important representatives of the local communities, what kind of structure we would want to work with, and which structures we want to work as, and in order to provide the best products which are actually useful for the local communities and local people. So this generally describes the structure of the program. Additionally, what I can mention is also that the approach has turned out to be quite successful and now is being replicated in 5 different municipalities in Western Cape Province. But this is just the beginning of the process.
In this department, I work on several projects. The projects are usually linked to a specific informal settlement. The 3 largest projects that I work on is the Klapmuts project, the Langreth project, and then also the projects in Kayamandi. These are the 3 biggest, as mentioned, informal settlements in our area. The dynamics of the different areas is quite different. Whilst certain things work in one area doesn't mean it doesn't necessarily work in another area. The projects that we are currently focusing on in these areas are enumerations, and then also looking at reblocking as a alternative to formal subdivision and the likes.
So at the African Centre for Cities, we have a range of programs. One of the programs is called CityLab programs, and this particular program that Mercy is working on is also CityLab, and I run what's called the Sustainable Human Settlement CityLab. The Sustainable Human Settlement CityLab, it's a sort of fancy word for basically saying how do we deal with the housing issue in a way that really makes sense, which is integrated and both environmentally, socially, politically, fiscally sustainable. My work has focused primarily on issues relating to housing. And because the national policy shift is away from the provision of free housing and towards the upgrading of informal settlements, upgrading is a central part of that discussion. Even though the shift conceptually towards upgrading took place 10 years ago, it's only now that we're really getting to the meat and bones of what that means for on-the-ground practice and what it means for the departments which we work with on a daily basis. And so upgrading is a constant part of our daily discussion and is something that we really hope becomes more central to actual practice.
I think that the CityLab process is very good because it provides the space for professionals and researchers to discuss about the crucial elements of violence prevention and upgrading, because we have different topics of different meetings with a main overlapping topic of violence prevention, and today's meeting dealt with community participation and upgrading and how participation influences reduction in violence. So as I said, I think it's very useful for exchanging the views and perhaps seeing how the theoretical considerations or policy that is describing the processes that should happen in the field, how this element can be implemented in practice. So this is one of the very interesting outputs of our meetings.
I think the CityLab project is a very important process because it opens up doors and ideas and avenues to other organizations and people and so forth within the development environment, which would not necessarily under the normal circumstances have been open to a municipality or at least a government department. So the importance of the CityLab is that you hear these new ideas, you find out what other people are doing, how they are doing, and in some cases you might also be able to provide a solution or add to a solution. I think the CityLab also allows for interaction with people that would not be necessarily be seen at the same table or at the same time. The one thing, for instance, that our municipality has done is that we made a partnership with a non-governmental organization. Now, usually these two entities are antagonistic because we are looking at the same thing from different sides, and what the CityLab does is they're bringing all of us to the table and we're talking about the common goal, maybe just a different avenue of reaching that goal.
So as the coordinator of one of the other city labs at the African Centre for Cities, it's really exciting to be a part of Mercy's CityLab, which focuses primarily on the issue of safety and violence. Because safety and violence is an issue not just in informal settlements but in different parts of the area with different characteristics and natures, it allows me to move away from just looking at the question of who needs housing, which is often the more narrow approach of government officials. But it allows me to step back and look at the city as a whole and some of the issues around safety and human protection. Sustainable human settlements, a large portion of that is public safety. It is about how people not just sit in their house safely, but move around the city. So not looking at the issue of safety and violence is a gap if we're looking at sustainable human settlements. Mercy's lab tries to fill that gap.
The process didn't finish yet, hopefully it will be, or it's already quite strong. But I think what would be very useful output at the end are some sort of publications that could be disseminated to broader audience. So something which could show actually what we've been discussing about, and something which would give us opportunity to promote ideas outside of that room, perhaps outside of academia. So all of what we said will be captured and somehow disseminated to interested people.
The process can be strengthened. Maybe we can have the discussions that we have, if it comes out in some sort of publication, then obviously the audience that can be reached can be significantly made broader. And then also to have more of these kinds of city labs where you have these various individuals, professionals and officials sit at a table where they talk about general things, but also things that they will impact on the future.
Normally city labs are quite in-depth processes that happen over, say, mine is a 3-year period. And usually they have some sort of tangible outputs along the way which force different people from different institutions and organizations, often with competing rationalities, to make tough decisions together. So it's not simply a case of putting the same people just in the same room, but asking them to really navigate and negotiate issues which may affect their institutions in very different ways. So say a human rights organization in conversation with a local government, which is meant to respond to those human rights but has another set of imperatives which are also constraining them.